Hi all, here is the comfrey that I harvested this morning. Hi Sherry, and we're going to work with it a little bit together, and I'll share with you a little bit about how I like to talk with the plant spirits. Hi everyone, welcome. Please share your names. I see Dudley, I see a lot of people joining all at once, and I'm not sure I caught all of your names, but if you could just please share your names with me. Hi, is that Armando is your name? And welcome. And if you'd like to, I would love it if you invited your followers to join us on this scope today. We're going to be, hi Sharon, thank you for coming. We're going to be talking about comfrey, and you can see on the table here, yes, lots of hearts for comfrey. There's a pile of comfrey leaf that I harvested this morning. Thank you for inviting your followers. And if you want to tweet about this broadcast as well, to let your Twitter friends know, the more the merrier. Comfrey is really a plant that can help and support everyone, and thank you so much for sharing about that. And I would just like to first take a moment before we start, as we're starting here, to all just, we can come to a place of listening to the plant. Here we have these wonderful leaves. They're a bit dirty, so part of what I'm going to do is clean them off. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Please post your name if it's different than your handle. QKS. This is comfrey. Habla español, Sajid? Habla inglés? See? No? Yeah, this is comfrey. I don't know the word for it in Spanish. No sé la palabra en español. But it is a very wonderful herb, and I'll talk more about it. But first I just want to have us take a moment to connect with the spirit of this plant. And I've been doing so. I'll talk about how in a moment, but first let's all just take a moment to invite any wisdom to let this plant know, hello comfrey, spirit of the comfrey plant. Thank you for giving us these leaves to use for our health and vitality, for drawing the beautiful nutrients that we are hungry for up from the soil and making it available to us in your leaves in your own unique way. And thank you for growing and being generous and abundant and continually providing us with more and more nutrition and medicine. And thank you for joining us today, and we open our ears and our hearts and our spirits and our souls to receive any messages or guidance that you have for us, comfrey. So thank you for being with us today, and any other spirits of plants or elemental spirits, water, fire, air, or earth, that has any messages for us today. And you're all welcome. Whoever's here with me is welcome to invoke in this moment any guidance that you might want to receive from any of the guides that you consult with, spirit guides. You're welcome to invite that as well. Wonderful. So we've opened a space to listen, and I'm just going to set up the camera here so we can visit and talk about this comfrey. And so I'm just going to set it up here so that you can see what I'm doing as I work with the plant. So as you noticed, the plant has a bunch of stuff on it, the leaves. And since I'm planning on drying it, I harvested it this morning. I'm planning on putting it in the dehydrator and using it to make teas. I don't want to wash it in water because that would add water to it. It would add moisture to it and delay and slow the drying process. Now, since I am using the dehydrator, it probably wouldn't be that big of a problem, but some people like to hang their herbs to dry. So I just want to show that you can take a paintbrush and brush off any dust that you have on your plant, and it works just fine. And actually, I'm under the impression and belief that having a little dirt from the garden that we end up consuming or get into our tea, or a little bacteria from the garden, is actually very healthy. This is how babies' guts get and children's get infused with the microflora that's healthy in our intestines. I don't know if you notice, but children often eat dirt. They are craving the microflora that's in the soil. And so many of our ailments in this day and age are from a deficiency in those microorganisms, the healthy microorganisms that help us to digest our food and extract the nutrients that we need from our food. And so having a little bit of residue of the dirt on the leaves that we're going to make into our tea later is really actually a good thing. So there is my cleaned leaf, less dusty and dirty. And I'll continue doing that as I talk more. And I welcome your questions or comments here. And also please feel free to share this broadcast with your followers and share any hearts that you feel inclined to share. And any questions that you have about herbal medicine in general, comfrey specifically, health and wellness, dietary change, all those kinds of things I love to share about. So I wanted to talk about comfrey in particular. I remember my first introduction to comfrey was in an herbal class that I took with a teacher named Cami McBride, KAMIMCBRIDE. Hi, Lakeside, is that your name? Thank you for joining. I ask that you please post any name that you would like to be called by. That way I know, besides your handle, what you'd like to be called. And also, if you are liking what you're hearing in my broadcast, please feel free to share with your followers and tweet about it. I would love that. So I'm processing some comfrey leaves. And I was just talking about my teacher who introduced me to comfrey many years ago, Cami McBride. And what she had us do was go out to the comfrey plant and feel it with our hands and break open leaves and taste it. She had us do this with many plants, and I encourage you to do that if you're exploring herbs. Find a fresh plant and talk to it like that, through your senses. This is how plants communicate with us, is through our senses. And sometimes people start to develop their inner ear, where they start to hear messages of that nature, or their inner sight. They might receive visions of that nature as they talk to plants. So the messages that I've received and continue to receive when communicating with comfrey is that this is a plant that will help us to have strong bones, ligaments, tendons, and joints. And this is something that I've struggled with throughout my entire life. I started out with tendinitis in my hips as a ballerina and a swimmer when I was young, in high school and junior high. And it was quite serious. In fact, it ended my career as a ballerina and limited my ability to compete in swimming. Hi, Red Shirt. Welcome for joining. Thank you for joining. And please post whatever name that you would like to be called. And feel free to share the broadcast. So, when I got that message about comfrey and keep feeling connected to comfrey, it was quite a joy to me, because what it helps with, what it's traditionally used for, is if you have a sprain or a bone break or a bruise or a strain of some kind, it's wonderful to make a poultice, particularly of the comfrey root. Now, what a poultice is you grind it up like in the blender with a little water, and it makes a goopy, gelatinous substance called a poultice, and it's wet and goopy. And you wrap that. Hello, thank you for joining. Welcome. And you wrap that in a cheesecloth or some kind of a gauze bandage, and you put that on the injured area. So I had a client once who broke his arm, his wrist here, and he had it in a sling for a number of weeks before he was able to get a cast put on it. And they had to wait for the inflammation to go down in order to put it in a cast. And so he came to me for help, and so we got some fresh comfrey root from the garden. We put it in the blender, the root of the plant, and made this goopy mess. And it's kind of messy. It kind of makes your skin all brown and slimy, but it really helps those internal tissues to heal in a smooth way that's lined up. The trouble with a lot of those kinds of breaks or strains or bruises is that the tissues will heal again, but in a disorganized fashion. They'll be crooked, they won't be lined up, and there'll be scar tissue. And then once it's healed and you're trying to use that muscle or move that joint, you find your movement or your strength is limited because of that disorganized structure that's because of the strain or the break. And so what the comfrey does is it helps the healing to happen in an organized way, so that the fibers of the muscles, the fibers of the tendons line up and are more strong, and they're organized and they're working together. And not only that, but it has a mucilaginous quality, which is a slimy texture, and that helps the fibers of the muscles and the joints to be able to slide easily across each other when necessary. Many of our muscles and tendons overlap, and if they are if we don't have enough slippery texture between them, then they don't slide and they stick, and this limits our, they become adhered to each other. And this limits our movement and our ability to move around, and actually can cause quite a bit of pain. I'm a massage therapist, and I work with a lot of clients who have a lot of pain from adhesions, from whether it's injuries or just from being dehydrated. And these are the kinds of things that comfrey tea can help with, because then you're getting the nutrients that the comfrey is drawing out of the soil, and the structural quality of the comfrey from the leaves, and encourages the body to create its own healthy structures. So these are some of the reasons why I love comfrey. Now, you may, if you're familiar at all with herbs, you may have been exposed to some questions about whether or not comfrey is actually good for you. There were a number of studies done at a certain point that claimed that comfrey was actually damaging for the liver, because there's a substance called allantoin in it. And my herb teacher pointed out that the studies that were done extracted large amounts of the allantoin from the comfrey. The amount of comfrey they had to use to get that, or no, actually they synthesized it. They synthesized it for this study, which was also, hello, welcome, which is already, they're not, when you synthesize something from a plant, in essential oils, the synthetic aromas usually have, hi, welcome, yes, what's going on here is I'm talking about comfrey. I've harvested some comfrey from my garden, and I'm talking about its medicinal and nutritional qualities and the way that it can help us have wonderful vitality and aliveness in our bodies and spirits. And I'm also talking about how we can communicate with the plants and get messages from the plants about our well-being, how we can relate with the plant world in a cooperative and co-creative way. So I was just talking about how when we try to synthesize, which a lot of pharmaceuticals are synthetic copies of substances that were originally found in plants. So when they synthesize the comfrey, there's only so many of the substances that they could reproduce, and a whole bunch more that they either ignored or didn't think were important. And so like synthetic rose essential oil, for example, has about 50 components to it that people are able to synthetically reproduce and put together so it kind of smells like rose essential oil. But the actual real essential oil of roses has thousands and thousands of components that it's just too many, and some of them can't even be synthesized. And it's my feeling that the plants, our body then, when it receives the actual plant substances, like our comfrey tea, for example, and it gets all of the other things in the comfrey besides just the allantoin, that the body can then balance out and take what it needs, what this body needs, and it might use different pieces of all of those thousands and thousands of components than someone else's body might use, for example. And so the plants just give you all these nutrients, and then your body, in its inherent wisdom, can say, oh yes, this is what I need, and I'll just discard the rest. Whereas when we try to distill it and process it and say, no, this is the one that's making the effect that we want, or this is the thing that's doing it, we're eliminating the possibility that there's a whole combination or synthesis of all these other things that we just don't understand what it's doing, that's having some other effect that we can't see. So that's why, so they took the synthetic extract of this allantoin and gave it to animals, tested it on animals in super high doses. And my herb teacher, she said, if you were going to try and get that much allantoin from comfrey, from eating comfrey, because some people eat the leaves fresh, she said you would have to eat an entire bathtub full of comfrey leaves in one sitting to get the dose, the lowest dose that they were able to get, that they were giving these test animals that began to show any damage to the liver. And I'm not eating bathtubs full of comfrey, and you probably won't either. And so that alleviated any of my concerns about any toxicity from comfrey. And so I can't even grow bathtubs full of comfrey. It's, once it's dried, then it's even smaller because all the water's out of it. And so I'm just not concerned about it. And it's such a vibrant plant. It's such a happy plant, and it's beautiful, and it makes beautiful flowers. So that's the message that I get from the plant itself. So I welcome any of your questions or your comments, and if you like what I'm sharing, please feel free to share this broadcast with your friends and your other people, and ask any questions that you might have about comfrey or communicating with plants and plant spirits, nature spirits. I'm most recently reinitiating a practice of giving an offering to the garden every day. A strawberry, a cherry tomato. The nice thing about some of the offerings I'm giving to the garden is that they may one day give back. That's particularly true about the cherry tomatoes and the other tomatoes. So I'm trying to make the offerings in strategic locations so that next year when they come up, I'll know, oh yes, that was the cherry tomato offering that I made last summer. Thank you for coming back. And so having a relationship of equals with the plants. You know, so often we treat, well, already we treat other human beings as less than equal in so many ways. And so many of us focus our attention on learning how to treat other humans with respect and regard, and having good communication in our partnerships. And that's really very challenging for many people, hence the struggle with healthy relationships, healthy marriages, healthy relationships with our children, healthy relationships with our co-workers. And the way our society is set up and the way it's been built has been on having belief systems about certain types of people have less value and are less important than other types of people. And I feel that we're really evolving away from that and more into everyone is equal. And I also feel that part of the Green Revolution is recognizing that all the plants and animals and even the rocks and the waters and the sun and the moon and the stars and all of everything in creation is worthy of just as much respect and just as much conscious communication and love as we are, as people, as humans, and that we're part of this web of life. This, actually, I feel like Earth, or Gaia, as some call it, is a living organism that we are parts of. That the humanity is like an organ in this larger organism of Gaia. So true. Everything is alive and sacred. Thank you. Oh, there you are, Jennifer. Welcome. I'm so glad you joined me. I didn't notice when you came on. So, you know, it's one thing to have that belief that, yes, everything is alive and sacred, and then it's another thing in each moment of every day to treat this plant as an alive and sacred being that has given of its body, that had called me out and said, my leaves are ready. Take my leaves. I don't know if you've ever read the book The Giving Tree as a child. It was one of my favorite books where the tree just gives and gives and gives to the boy until it's nothing but a stump for him to sit on when he's an old man. And there's a bittersweetness in that. Welcome. Thank you for joining. And so what I would like to cultivate with the plants as well as animals and other people is more respect and co-creativity in our relationships. And so talking to the plants, thanking the plants, giving back to the plants. And there's many ways we can do that. One of the ways I've really been enjoying giving back, I talked about leaving little offerings in the garden. I bring out strawberries from my breakfast. I bring the dregs of my herbal teas out and put them directly in the soil underneath the plants. So when I make a big batch of tea in my crock pot, and then I strain it out, and I have all the bits of the plant matter that was made into a tea. I bring that out and give it back to the plants so they can have what's left. And other ways that I communicate with the plants is I bring my dishwater. I put a bucket underneath my sink, and I'm getting ready to put one in the kitchen, and I'm getting ready to put one underneath the bathroom sink as well, so that the plants are receiving information from the foods I'm eating and washing my dishes. The plants are receiving this information, and also from my, when I brush my teeth and spit into the bathroom sink, and that goes into the bucket. They'll be receiving information, very intimate information about my body and my nutritional needs. And I'm giving them this information. I also give them the water from my washing machine. We're in a severe drought here in Northern California, where I live, in all of California. And this is also my way of respecting and honoring the spirits of water and listening to the spirits of water, who are saying, that there needs to be a greater degree of respect and communication in our relationship with water here. And so this is my personal way, albeit small, of doing that, of being the change that I would like to see in the world. So the plants are getting all of this information about me. They're getting the skin of my body that rubs off on my clothing and in my bed sheets and my towels, and when I wipe my hands, and all of that very intimate information about me and my husband. And then they will respond with that information by drawing up from the soil the specific nutrients that I need. So the information they receive from my body, they will use, I feel, to give me the best nutrition that they can in their possibility. That's so interesting. I never heard of that, but plants are older than this, and so evolved. Exactly. And plants have evolved to give to the animals that they connect with, that they are around. And so it's interesting to note that when there's a plant, say like poison oak, that my herb teacher, Cammie McBride, always said, poison oak is actually power oak. I don't know if you're familiar with poison oak where you're at, but around here it grows all over the place, and if you touch it and get the oils on you, it's very much like poison ivy. You get a horrible rash. Most people get a horrible rash. Some people somehow develop immunity to it, but it's unclear as to how that actually occurs. It's different for different people. So this poison oak grows around here, and there are inevitably plants that are remedies for the poison oak growing nearby. And when you know about this, comfrey is one of them. It doesn't grow so much in the wild here because it needs a lot more water. It's certainly the first, that's right. It's the first, the comfrey is the first plant to wilt in my garden when I haven't washed the dishes yet or I haven't done laundry. whole other plant that I'll talk about another time. It's really wonderful. And so is you can just find an area out in a park somewhere where there's a wild area of plants growing, and just start taking a random walk. You can kind of close your eyes, feel your feet on the earth, and ask to be guided to the right plant for you to communicate with today. And then you can just open your eyes a little bit and allow yourself to feel where your feet want to walk. Feel if your feet are drawn to walk in any particular direction, and follow that guidance from your feet. You might feel the pull somewhere else. Your heart might feel pulled in a particular direction, or your third eye. You might feel a tingling in your skin or your hands. Your fingers might want to point or reach towards a particular direction. Whatever it feels like, your nose might point towards a particular direction. So however the message comes to you. And I remember just my feet when I did this exercise, and I think I may need to start doing this one more. We would just begin to walk, and the first time I did this, I walked, and then suddenly, there in front of my feet was this light green fuzzy plant with these big long lobed soft leaves, and I sat down next to the plant and I asked the plant if it had any messages for me, any gifts for me. And I just got these feelings inside, and it was actually quite a verbal communication, that it was about my lungs. It was going to help me with my lungs and my breathing and my throat. I'd had some chronic coughing, and so this plant offered to help me with that. And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And so I went back to the group where the herbalist who was guiding us was, and shared about my experience. And she said, oh, yes, was it this plant here? And she pointed to not the very same plant, but one that was exactly the same kind of plant. And I said, well, yes, that's just the same kind of plant. And she said, this is mullein. And this mullein is typically used for opening up the lungs and opening up the throat and helping with coughs and things like that. And mullein has been my friend ever since then when I have a cough or a sore throat. And it's used for a number of other things that I use it for as well. And I'll go to mullein as my friend. And that wasn't something I read in a book. That was something that the plant told me directly. And this is how one of my other herbal teachers, Susan Weed, S-U-S-U-N, Weed, W-E-E-D. She has lots of YouTube videos out there. She even has an online university called the Wise Women University. I highly recommend checking out her stuff. She talks about, and something I wholeheartedly embrace as well, that the plants communicated to people from the get-go about what they were good for and how they could help us. And when we spent more time outside and walking on the earth and needing to know what plants to eat and what plants not to eat, we were motivated. And we've lost a lot of that motivation and lost the the sense of its importance as well. So this is why I'm enjoying sharing about this connection with the herbs and continuing to nourish that connection for myself. And I encourage you to do so as well. So I'd love to answer any questions. A curandera. I'm signing off hungry. Okay, have a wonderful meal and nourish yourself well. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. And unless anybody else has any more questions, I'm going to go back to cleaning my comfrey. And I look forward to seeing you again here on, yep, thanks Jennifer, and thank you all the rest of you. And I look forward to connecting with you again. All right, take care.